Hello and welcome back to the Start a Glamping Business podcast. Today we have not just a returning guest, but a guy who this is now his fourth appearance on the podcast. Many of the OG listeners, when we're very UK centric, will have heard the 3 episodes that he's done previously. But today's guest is Calum MacLeod, my former business partner, former boss, and still friend, I hope. We first met through Glampitect UK, then we became business partners in Glampitect North America, and he's got some really cool projects going on in the UK. Obviously, we're going to be talking about UK topics today, but it's all highly applicable wherever you are. So without further ado, Calum, welcome back to the show. Do you want to just give us a bit of a backstory of you, how you got into glamping, and then maybe how we met?
Hi Nick, thank you for having me back, and thank you for the intro. It's good to be on for a fourth time. I actually didn't remember it was 4 until you'd said when I first got on. Good to be back, thank you. I'm Calum MacLeod. I had a very normal job before I got into glamping. I did a degree, got a master's in engineering, and then I ended up kind of stumbling into the glamping industry a little bit. My mum and dad had some land in the north of Scotland, and it was a popular tourist destination, and it was up and coming, and glamping was very up and coming at the time, much as it is now. It was not as well known, glamping, as it is today, but it was certainly up and coming. And I put in a planning application, which is much like permitting in America, and we quickly got approved, and I subsequently raised investment. During the process of setting up my own first site, I realised that there was a whole load of people that wanted to set up glamping businesses, but didn't necessarily have the tools, the right people there to help, and so on. And so I set up Glampitect. And that is, as you mentioned, how we came to meet, and obviously we're on the Glampitect podcast today. That's how I got into the industry. We've grown to various different things. We've helped over 1,000 people in the UK set up glamping businesses, and I have some bigger sites going on myself just now as well, all of which I'm sure we'll get into, so I'll not speak too much more about that just now.
Yeah, great. And just to clarify, I probably should have been more clear in the intro. Calum is the original founder of Glampitect, the whole brand, the whole business, which obviously started in the UK, and then this business, Glampitect North America, is an offshoot of that. But just going back to the first glamping site that you opened, you had a tiny patch of land, really, of family land on the north coast of Scotland. You knew practically nothing about glamping at the time, right? You just kind of... I'll let you tell the story. You had this patch of land. How did the idea come about, and what was your level of knowledge going into it? Presumably you learned quite a lot through the process.
Yeah, so you're right. Practically nothing is probably generous. I knew nothing, absolutely nothing. It wasn't even my idea. I'll be honest, I'm an ideas guy, right? So, a lot of people, particularly in Glampitect UK and people that come across me in day to day, would be very surprised that it wasn't my idea, because I'm an ideas guy and I'm an action guy, but I wasn't so much so then. Really doing glamping and all the work that I've done over the last little while has really developed me as a person. Going back to that first site, so my mum and dad had some land, and it was in a popular tourist destination. It was certainly up and coming, the tourist destination, and it's a place that I've gone on holiday my whole life. And as you say, it's a tiny plot, 0.13 of an acre. It's like 600 metres squared, so absolutely tiny. It was on a slope, not too steep, but steep enough that we had to do some kind of work around that as well. And it was my mum's idea, so we went to the plot of land one day. This must be 2017, and she was like, "Oh, that glamping thing's kind of up and coming." I was like, "Oh yeah, I've heard about that. That's interesting." And kind of we never really spoke about that again. And then one day I went back to him. I was like, "Look, I've done a drawing," because I had CAD ability. I could do drawings on the computer, and I did a CAD drawing, probably terrible. I'll try and dig it out and see what it looks like. And I worked out we could fit on like 4 pods. And so I put in a planning application, and I'd never done a planning application either, which, as I say, is much like permitting in the UK, in the US. And yeah, stumbled through the whole thing. You know, if I look back in hindsight now, the whole thing I probably did terribly. Certainly would have versus where I am today. But yeah, the key thing was I just got on and did it, and learned as I went. And yeah, obviously in that process and beyond, I've learned a little bit about glamping, and I know a little bit more now than I did then.
Yeah, and now, you know, Glampitect exists. There are glamping podcasts you hear and read about successful operators telling their story and giving advice. At the time, there wasn't really that. There was no Glampitect to help you through. So as you say, you were just stumbling through it. Presumably, you learned a hell of a lot going through that process.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like even in those early days, I learned enough. And it was the foundation to what now exists. I probably learnt more in the first 2 years setting up that site and then setting up Glampitect than all of the subsequent years. You know, where are we now? My first site opened in 20. In fact, it's exactly 5 years ago. We're about a month away from it being 5 years ago that opened.
I bet it feels like 10.
Yeah. So in that kind of first year before it got set up, and then the first year after it got set up, I probably learned 90% of what I know. And then, you know, the only real developments that I have now is just scale and understanding scale and how to go, you know, big. That's really all I'm learning now. So all of my kind of fundamentals, 90% of what I know and understand about the industry was generated in those first 2 years. And then now it's almost creating stuff that's not been done before that, again, is back to learning again. But yeah, most of the learning was done in the first little while.
Yeah, so you got this site open, realised that there wasn't enough help for people in your position, and you decided to become that help, and you started Glampitect. Now, you had this idea of helping people through the process and maybe getting planning permission, which again is the permitting system in the UK. I think, you know, we don't have to kind of add that on after this. But yeah, so you know, what was your vision at the time when you were starting Glampitect in the UK? Did you expect it to just be planning permission? Did you expect it to go on to things like you're doing now? What was the vision, and how did that business grow?
Yeah, honestly, like this is pretty crazy talking about this bit, because it does bring you back to like, wow, we came so far. I remember when I first thought about Glampitect, it was before my site was even open. We were at the Glamping show in the UK in September 2018, and this was when I had the idea. I was walking about choosing a pod to buy, and I realised at that point that there was loads of people that needed help and nobody to help them. And so I actually had the idea for Glampitect before I owned a site. It was as I was going through the process. It went on the back burner a little bit because I didn't really know, you know, if it was going to be the thing that I wanted to do. And so, yeah, I kind of paused on it a little bit. And then probably just before my first site opened, I kind of brought back up the idea with my business partner at the time, who is now still my business partner in both those businesses, Ali. And yeah, we, at that point, I remember the conversation vividly now. It was in our David Lloyd, which is like a gym leisure centre type place. We were sitting down having a coffee, and we were like, right, we've learned some stuff, we can probably help people, let's just do enough to not need to have a job anymore. Like, that was the only goal with Glampitect. It was, you know, obviously help as many people as we can, but just, you know, make enough money, get got going on to not have a job anymore. I didn't have any clue that we would help. You know, we've done like 1,500 feasibility studies. We've got over 100 open sites, loads of planning permissions, and you know, if you'd said that number, any of those numbers to me 5 years ago, I'd be like, no way, that's not possible. The industry, apart from anything else, I wouldn't have thought is big enough to sustain that. So yeah, you know, talking about that and thinking about that, I probably should do that more. because it is quite good to realise how far we came and how quickly we did it.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say to that is it actually did make you have a job, because I know how much stress it's caused you growing that business over the last 5 years. But as is natural, so what size is that business now? How many staff have you got, and kind of what's its main functions in the UK now?
Yeah, so I left my 9 to 5 to work 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
That being said, we actually are in a pretty good place right now. It's taken a long time to get to where we are, but the business does operate quite well as a business now. Although, yeah, it was certainly a lot of work for a lot of years to get to here. So just now in the UK alone, we have like 15, 16 staff. We have 4 architect designers. We have 2 people that do feasibility studies, and kind of 3, and everything else around that. So yeah, it's grown pretty big compared to where it was in the early days. We turned over about £1 million. So yeah, none of those things I would have expected when we first had the idea, far from it.
Yeah, and the other thing that you probably didn't expect at the time, which is now your big project that you're working on outside of Glampitect, is Avant Glamp. So rather than me trying to explain what it is, do you want to just kind of set the scene for what Avant Glamp is?
Yeah, so much the same as NC 500 pods and Glampitect, this kind of happened backwards. So when I was at the first glamping show that we did, I got approached by somebody from the NEC in Birmingham, the National Exhibition Centre. I'll kind of put a few points around that so that people can relate it to America. It's exhibition space. They've got like 17 or 18 halls, and they do about 550 events a year. 3.5 million people each year go through the NEC, and they've got an arena next door, so they'll have Snoop Dogg coming along and doing a concert, Chris Brown, blah blah blah. I picked the most American people I could think of there that I knew had been there. So yeah, they've got all those sorts of things going on, and they came to us and said, we've got some land literally at our front door that is a woodland, which is crazy. When you look at it on like Google Earth, it just looks like a massive car park with massive buildings in the middle. But if you zoom in right to where the front door is, we've got a lake and there's a woodland. And they wanted to do something with the woodland, and yeah, they didn't know what to do because it's a bit of a concrete jungle, and they didn't want to lose the woodland. So they had this idea to do glamping, but they knew they didn't want to do it themselves. They're too big, they're an event space, they want to bring in the best people for it. Through Glampitect, they thought, oh, these guys look like they might know somebody that would want to do it. So yeah, they said, do you know somebody that would want to do a glamping site on our land? I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And that quickly kind of got to the point I was doing proposals for the CFO, the CEO, the CMO. We went through various different rounds and got to a point that it was going really well. COVID then came along. The NEC is a place that brings a lot of people together in a small place. Well, it's a big place, but when you're putting 100,000 people in, it feels small. And so they stopped everything for a year or two with COVID. So they had bigger fish to fry. In hindsight, that's probably one of the best things that's ever happened to me for this project, because it gave me and my businesses time to grow to the point that when we came back together, which I think was November 2022, we had a coffee. COVID was dying down a bit, and we had a coffee, and it sparked right back up. And we got to a point, we got the lease agreed, we got the deal agreed, and I put in a pre-planning application in about June 2023, something like that. It came back fairly positive a few months later, and subsequently put in a full planning application. and that then got approved only recently, officially. It was February the 23rd, not that I'm counting that we got the decision notice, but we got the kind of draft decision notice, which is a bit backwards in itself, in I think November 2023. And so this is a 59 unit site. It's going to be, as far as we're aware, the biggest luxury glamping site in the UK. We don't know of anything anywhere near that scale, but if anybody knows of anything, correct me if I'm wrong, tell me what it is. It's going to be one of the most technologically advanced. We're developing an app that does some really cool stuff. We're going to gamify electricity usage, which I don't know of, certainly in glamping, but I don't really know of generally. So we're trying to have a bit of a sustainability vibe around the site and stuff like that. And so yeah, we could be developing in the next couple of months on that, and everything's ready to go. Now, that is one piece. I mentioned that it all kind of happened a bit backwards again. That is one piece of what has become the wider Avant Glamp brand. With Avant Glamp, we aim to do 1,000 units over 100 sites over the next 10 years. And that's going to be sites right throughout the UK. We have one in Cornwall just now, and we're talking to, so that's right down at the bottom of the UK for those that don't know. We're talking about one in the north of Scotland and everything in between. We have 2 or 3 in planning just now. We have about 40 at feasibility stage in terms of deals. We're partnering with landowners rather than just going and renting land. We're partnering with landowners that have come to us through Glampitect and managing the planning, managing the build. We've also partnered with one of my business partners in Avant Glamp, is the owner of Pod Factory. They are the UK's biggest and best, as far as I'm concerned, glamping pod manufacturer. In fact, you introduced me to that, Alex, at Pod Factory.
Still waiting for that pint.
Yeah. It's funny because we worked with so many manufacturers for ages, and I one day decided a lot of it was hard work. Some were good, some were bad, some were indifferent, and I took a step back and I went, right, who's the best manufacturer in the industry, and picked them. Nick, through the stuff that you did, you obviously knew Alex and introduced me, and the rest is history. So yeah, back to Avant Glamp. That's pretty much it. We're aiming to do 1,000 units over 100 sites over the next 10 years, and it has become, I guess, back to what I'd initially said, the thing that's helping me learn again, because we probably got to the point whereby we're doing everything we need to in helping people set up sites. We've really stabilised there. We've got a strong team. So yeah, it's good to be back doing something that I maybe don't know 100% about. To challenge again.
Yeah, and so I know for a fact that that's going to be a big business. Nobody's really doing it at a big scale in the UK. There's 1 or 2 kind of revenue share sites, but no one with the industry reputation and marketing skills of Glampitect. So I'm sure that will be huge. And then going back to the NEC, which is kind of the big central project that this is all anchored around. That you've told me there's some really exciting plans. You've obviously alluded to gamifying electricity and everything like that. Is there one particular feature of this site that you would say is particularly cool and unique that you're really excited to share?
Yeah, probably the app. That's the most innovative thing around about it. So I mentioned the gamifying of electricity. It's going to be the kind of central hub, as long as everything goes to plan, of the pod. So I'll talk you through a few different things that it'll have going on. Keyless entry, you tap your phone to get into the pod. Once you're in the pod, you'll be able to control the lights from your phone, you'll be able to control the TV from your phone, you'll be able to control the heating and all of those other things. And there'll be a dashboard that shows you, so this is kind of onto the gamification of electricity and potentially water. There'll be a dashboard that will show you how much electricity you've used versus the other 48 pods on site, and whoever uses the least on any given night will get some sort of prize. They might get a free 1 night stay next time, the next might get 10% off or something like that. So we're really incentivizing people to use less electricity, which from our perspective has two benefits. One, we want to use the least amount of electricity possible for the environment, but also it's going to make things cheaper for us. So there's benefits on our end as well. And that's kind of the tone of the app. It'll do things like when you leave, it will know you leave, and it'll also know on any given day what event is on. So when you walk out the door, it'll say something like, "Oh, I see you're going to Crufts," which is, I believe, the world's biggest dog show, and it's literally a 2-minute walk from our front door. I believe you're going to Crufts. I can see that it finishes at 4 p.m. today. Have a good day. Do you want us to turn off your heating, and do you want us to turn it back on when at 3 p.m. before you come back from Crufts? And you can say yes or no. You can change the time that it's going to turn the heating back on, for example. And so as long as everything goes to plan with the tech, it's going to be pretty cool. We'll see if it does all go to plan though.
Hi everyone, Nick from Glampitect North America here, and I've just got a very quick message to announce some extremely exciting news. Since launching in July 2022, Glampitect North America has made a name for itself in the North American glamping industry. We've consulted on over 40 glamping projects, accumulated over 47,000 podcast downloads and plays, and we're now ready to take the next step. And with that, we're absolutely delighted to announce that we're beginning the process of developing our own glamping projects. We want you to be involved. There are more details to come, but for now, we're taking expressions of interest from prospective investors. We're so excited to get this going. It's been a long time coming, and we can't wait to get you involved. So all you have to do is fill out the form in the description of this episode, and we'll be in touch with more information very soon. We can't wait to hear from you, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye. Okay, yeah, and that app sounds amazing. I'm sure there's going to be a load of tech nerds working away on that over the next 6 months. I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. So this is obviously a huge project. It's on a huge piece of land, 59 units, and that we'll try and flash some images up of the glamping pods that are going to be there. For those who don't know what a glamping pod is, it's a timber structure. It's like an upside down boat kind of shape. And it's the structure that absolutely dominates the UK market. They're absolutely everywhere. So this is going to be obviously a huge project. How much is it actually going to cost, do you think?
Yeah, so we're expecting just now it'll be about £7.5 million, which I don't know, what's that, $10 million, something like that. So yeah, a pretty big project. Those numbers, I think, in America are maybe not as crazy big as what they are in the UK. But there's probably not been many glamping sites in the UK that have cost more than £1 million. Even at that, I can't think of one. So it is, compared to the rest of what's happened in the UK, completely different and massive. As long as everything goes planned, we're going to turn over about £5 million, which will be $6 or $7 million. So it will pretty quickly pay itself back. But yeah, big investment, and that's kind of what I was saying before, was I'm back to learning now. I'm back to doing something I've never done before, which is fun. I like doing stuff like that.
Yeah, what you said about it being a little bit different in the UK and the US is massive. I always say this is one of the biggest differences when I'm asked what the difference is between the UK and the UK and the US industries is. There is just so much more access to capital in the US particularly, and there's a lot of glamping brands that have been backed by huge venture capital funds and institutional investors. That's just not the case in the UK whatsoever. I think that the biggest raise I heard was about £500,000, and it's just a completely different landscape. So the next question is, how on earth do you go about raising that money?
Move to America. Interesting question. It's harder, I suspect, than what it would be in the US. We've been quite fortunate that I got some connections through other stuff that have very good bank connections, and it was kind of a client, kind of a friend, and all through the process when I spoke to him about this, he said, look, a bank will do this. This is solid enough, in a solid enough location, it's the right size, blah, blah, blah. We will get a bank that will do this. And so where are we today? We have a bank that has said we will give you 60% of the money. We are currently raising the other 40%. We've got a couple of different methods. We'll probably use them both, and they are private loans and a bit of equity as well. So it looks like we'll probably do the other 40% partly through each of those. It's actually not quite 40% because the money that we've spent to date is relatively significant, and that'll go to part of the 40%. So yeah, it's 30% or whatever's left that needs to be done. So that's the plan. But yeah, as we say, it is so different to the US that even like with the bank, when we're talking about like historic examples, prerequisites, like not prerequisites, that's the wrong term. What's the term they use in law? Precedent. When we're looking for precedent on this sort of investment, it does not exist. So we are creating the precedent, which is making it interesting for us, the bank, and everybody else involved. We're getting to a good point with the bank. I'm very confident they will give us some money. They've pretty much committed to it, as long as we can raise the rest. So that's the plan. That's how we're going to do it. But as we say, very, very different to the US. You guys over there have a lot more access to funding, which would probably make my life a little bit easier if it was in the UK.
Yeah, and from funding to planning permission, presumably again a 59 unit project. I would imagine that's a pretty lengthy team-wide planning process that you had to gain approval for.
Yeah, yes and no. Interestingly, it was clearly a big project. It was expensive, way more expensive than I thought. It was time. It took a lot of time, way more time than I thought. But that was probably more my naivety than it being longer or more expensive than what we thought. I'd just been used to doing 4 unit sites, 6 unit sites, probably 10 or 12 at most. And that's a completely different proposition to 59 units in a woodland at the front of a place that has 3.5 million people go every year. So yeah, I think that was just my naivety. It was definitely a big process, but it did help that we had really strong support from the NEC, which is the biggest economic driver certainly in that council, almost certainly in the West Midlands, which is a region. It will be one of the biggest economic drivers in the whole UK. So if they say they want something to happen, it typically does, which did make things easier. We had a lot of boxes to tick, a lot of I's to dot and T's to cross. We had an objection from one of the consultees, which is essentially when you put in a planning application, they ask various different experts within the council what's their thoughts. We had a 16-point objection from one of the consultees in the early days, and so we had to work our way through that, which was challenging and scary, but we got there. And I think they're very satisfied. We were obviously satisfied. So there was a lot to do, but yeah, at the same time, looking back, it could have been harder as well. We probably got quite a good wind. It probably went as well as it could have for what we were doing.
And what does the team look like for a big application like that?
Yeah, so we had internally in Glampitect, we had probably 3 or 4 guys on it, varying degrees of time spent and effort. The main driver was Xanthe. She's one of the senior designers and architect. She designed the site. She knows that site better than me, way better than me. I obviously know the broader business more, but she knows way more about the site. Like if I need to know where something is or what's going on in a certain area, I'll ask her. And so that's the kind of main guys internally in Glampitect. We had the research team on it and stuff like that too. In Avant Glamp, I spent long periods full time on it, as well as one of my early investors. So I said planning cost way more than I expected. It was way more than expected, to the point that I needed an investor to get through that. And Cyrus and his wife Gail, they've come in and been absolutely unbelievable. You've obviously met them, you know them, and they're great. Well, I'll work with Cyrus forever now. And and Gail, they came in, and Cyrus has experience of, he worked in insurance, cross-border, big corporate insurances, for like 20 years. And so he's come in with a lot of corporate experience and understanding, and he came in right at the right point where he looked and he was like, we've so much to do here. I know how to get people working together and get there. So he then became the kind of centre of driving it forward and driving all of the other people forward. Now, who are the other people? We had external consultants in transport, ecology, trees, art. I always struggle with this word. I don't know if it's the same in the US. Arboriculture, I think is the term. I always just say tree guy. But arboriculturalist, I think is the correct term. Landscape designers. What else did we have? Drainage designers, structural engineers, finance director, obviously. We've now got a construction director in Avant Glamp. We've got a commercial director. I think that's probably not everybody, but you get the gist. There was a lot of people, and still is a lot of people involved today.
I think it's obvious that there's going to be a bigger team required for big projects like that, and that might be a kind of lesson for anyone who's a one-man army you're thinking of doing maybe a 60-unit site, that maybe it's best to start with a smaller one if you're going to do it yourself, or you need the money to bring in a big team for a bigger site like that. I think that's pretty applicable across both the UK and the US.
One thing on that, because yes and no. Yes and no, and the reason I'm a bit hesitant on that is you're definitely right, but how old am I now, 30, if 26-year-old me that's young and excited and ready to set up this NEC project, listen to what we just said there, I would go, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this, oh my god, I'm just going to forget this ever existed. It was my naivety that probably is the only reason that this project happened. If I looked at everything that we needed to do for planning, everything that we needed to do for funding, everything that we needed to do for everything along the way, I'd have just thought, I am not capable of that, and I will go and do something else. It's just because of incrementally faced challenges, we've managed to overcome them all to date. And so you're right. Think about it, but at the same time, you only know what you're capable of when you start doing it, and I've got no regrets about doing this at all. If you want to go for it, because 26-year-old me listening to that would have probably thought no chance.
Absolutely. Just a couple of more general questions now, pulling on your years of experience in the industry. I can't believe it's actually only 5 years. I feel like I've known you about 10, which I don't know what that says for you, but if you were to give one piece of advice to someone entering the industry, regardless of whether it's in the UK or the US, so let's maybe keep it general, if you could give one piece of advice to someone entering the industry, what would it be?
Just do it. That's probably way more generic than you hoped for there, but that is the number one biggest issue that we see, the biggest hurdle that we see with Glampitect clients, with other people that I speak to, I guess in glamping and everything else, is, a lot of people come and they look and kind of, why I just said what I said on how scary the 59-unit site sounds like it might be, is people get kind of stage fright when it gets to certain points. And as I said, everyone's capable of way more than they probably think they are. If you've got an idea and you like it, go after it and see what happens. Now, going after it doesn't mean you just need to throw hundreds of thousands of dollars at something and hope for the best. Go about it in the right way, be diligent, get a good understanding of what's going on, learn about the permitting process and what you need to do, find the right units, find the right manufacturer, and so on. You know, don't just wildly go into it. But yeah, the number one piece of advice I would give to anybody thinking about starting a glamping business is just start doing it and see where you get to.
And what's the biggest mistake that you'd recommend they avoid?
God, I always get asked this. I should have a stock answer for this because I get asked this like every time I want something like this. I get asked it and I always think, I don't know, and it's probably partly to do with my mindset. Is I don't really believe in mistakes. I believe that, you know, they're lessons learned. So I always flip a negative into a positive with that and try not to do it again. So yeah, it's always a challenge when I never look back and think, oh, that was such a big mistake. But you know, much in line with what this is a kind of answer I typically give. Much in line with what I said about just do it. In the early days, way back to the start of this conversation, I got the planning permission approved. I missed this part out when we were first talking about it. I got the planning permission approved, and then I looked and thought, well, it's like £200,000. I don't have £2,000, never mind 200,000. And I kind of forgot about the project for like 6 months. Like, planning was approved, my mum and dad had the land, we were ready to build, but the £200,000 raise looked so insurmountable that I kind of got that stage fright that I just spoke about. I thought, oh well, I'm not capable of that. I'll, you know, get on with my day job. I was an electrical design engineer. I'll get on with my day job and I'll forget it existed. And it was only a chance conversation between my cousin and one of his friends that ultimately the friend, who was my friend too, became an investor. So yeah, kind of by chance things progress. So my biggest mistake, to directly answer the question, was sitting on that, you know, potential glamping site and not doing anything on it for like 6 months, and then only just by luck it coming back and happening. So yeah, that was definitely my biggest mistake. I've obviously flipped it now. We are where we are, and all is forgotten. But yeah, that's the thing that I would probably say to that.
Fantastic. And so yeah, if there's anyone who wants to get a hold of you, who do you want to speak to, Calum? What do you want to ask them, and how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, oh good. So the main one just now would be potential investors. If anybody wanted to invest in a different you know, area of glamping in the UK, with different types of structures is probably the main difference, then, you know, let's have a chat. And yeah, if anyone's got any questions as well on the journey, that, you know, not so much from my perspective, but from theirs, I'm always happy to help people. You know, one key thing on that: make sure you come with, you know, the right information. Send over, you know, good solid questions. I sometimes get, you know, emails saying, I want to set up a glamping site. What do I do? I've no land. Give me the keys to the castle. Like, if you come with that, I'll probably just not reply. But if you send me a kind of well thought out email, or, you know, give some good information and ask for a call, I'm always more than happy to help people.
And your email is?
It is Calum, CALUM, at Glampitect, glampitect.co.uk. So key one at the end there, .co.uk.
Calum, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm sure we'll be having you on for the 5th time when the NEC is up and running, and we look forward to seeing it then.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Hopefully it's been useful, and good luck in your glamping journeys.